New York State has launched a major crackdown on Hasidic yeshivas that have failed to meet minimum secular education standards, stripping public funding from several schools in Brooklyn and threatening to revoke the legal status of more. The move follows a 2022 New York Times investigation that exposed widespread deficiencies in basic literacy, math, and science instruction at dozens of yeshivas, where the curriculum often focuses almost exclusively on intensive Talmudic study. Quote, children must learn to speak, read, and write in English and gain at least a basic knowledge of math, science, and social studies, a state education department spokesperson emphasized, citing the state's long-standing legal requirement that private schools provide an education substantially equivalent to that of public schools. Many yeshivas, however, view the mandate as an attack on religious freedom, with advocacy groups like PEARLS, which is an acronym, accusing state officials of targeting Orthodox Jewish communities and preparing lawsuits to block enforcement. Critics argue that the lack of secular education traps children in insular communities, leaving them economically and socially dependent for life, while defenders insist that religious study fosters critical thinking and spiritual resilience. The clash highlights a growing national debate over the limits of religious schooling in a modern pluralistic society and whether deeply traditional communities can or should be compelled to meet outside standards. Okay, so thank you, New York State. They are doing what has been a mandate for them to do for way too long. Way too long, this has been going on. Officials and school inspectors in New York State have known for decades that these schools are not doing the work that they are mandated to do by law, that they have been out of compliance with the law for so long. So long. I'm 100% behind this. If you refuse to comply with the law as a school, you should be shut down, period. Everyone here on the channel
Easy.
knows that we go
Yeah.
super hard on the bullshit that goes on in Islamic schools in the UK. And in fact, we're going to talk about one of those next. Okay. I'm going to hold the exact same standard. By law, you are required to teach American citizens and American children to a certain standard. What has been going on in these yeshivas has been called purposeful educational neglect. And this is really important to me because these kids will end up in different schools. You know, they get switched around, maybe they move, I don't know, and they end up in a different school environment. And their teachers are like, they can barely write a complete sentence in English. They barely speak English. They barely know math. They don't know anything that happened within their own nation where they live. Do they even know their rights as an American citizen? That's how insular these communities are. And this is what I really want to understand is that there is a problem with high control communities. There are many communities from many different ideologies, religious or political, that exert high levels of control over their members. And when it comes to the children, they are exerting informational control over the children. Informational control is very dangerous because it's creating a situation where they will be compelled to stay within their community because they have been purposefully deprived of the skills needed to exist in the outside world. So they become trapped because they cannot survive. If your way of life is so good as you say that it is, it should be able to compete with the other ideas existing within the society in which you live. You shouldn't need to control people to such a severe degree that that people are compelled to stay within your community because their life would be destroyed if they leave. It's very serious. It's very serious. And this whole movement, I want to emphasize to people that this whole movement to hold these schools accountable was started by kids who went through this system. It was started by teachers who used to be a part of this system. This movement to protect these children was started by adults who went through the system and were harmed. And they're looking out for the interests of these kids and saying, this is a violation of the law. Why are they not being held accountable? It's really that simple to me. People are saying, oh, no, this is religious freedom, blah, blah, blah. Like, your religious freedom does not extend so far that you get to deprive your children of what they have a legal right to as an American citizen. There are lots of activists that frame this as an anti Semitic move. And I have a massive contention with that. I think if we turn and look the other way because they are from this community, then we're saying, oh, well, it's different because they're Jews. I think that's anti Semitic. To look away, to not do something, to not protect these kids is actual discrimination against them on the basis of their ethnicity. To hold them to a standard where they're allowed to be neglected, where we have so much documentation that shows that the school results, the testing results from these schools is so poor. Like, we can't allow that. We just allow them to go through deprivation because of the community that they come from. That's discrimination. And so I'm super happy with this decision. And what is so crazy is that there are certain yeshivas in the Hudson Valley, which is, upstate New York, that are in open defiance. They're in open defiance of these decisions. And they're like, no, 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 we're going to keep going. I need to find this quote by this one guy. Um, they literally are just like putting up two middle fingers, and they're like, no, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. There are some people that push it to such an extreme. I remember when we were covering, 'cause this story has been going on for so long. We were covering this probably about 2 years ago, and there was this guy who's part of the Hasidic community, and he was holding this sign where he was comparing this action, like, to the Holocaust. I think it is so unfair. It's so I don't even know how to put it, like, cynical to make that comparison. So there was one yeshiva in the Hudson Valley that said, the rabbi running the school or the spokesperson said, quote, "We are not going to let the inspectors in. We're not going to teach what you want to teach. If we're cut off, we're cut off. We are ready for that fight, and with God's help, we're going to win it," he said. Like, literally, shut it down. Shut down the school.
What the hell?
You're just openly declaring your intent to just break the law. And part of the problem is, and part of why this is so major, and we covered this story, is that a lot of these schools receive public funding through various different programs that New York State has. It's a little bit complicated, but because these are technically like private schools, but they're receiving public funds because if you have a student with special needs, like, you can get these public funds. It's a whole thing. But basically, through different investigations that have been going on, it was proven that they were completely misusing all these public funds within these systems, within these religious school systems. Another problem that happened, and I just want to highlight this again, is that there are cases of legitimate political corruption regarding this issue of the yeshivas. and how they refuse to hold up their 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 requirements, their mandates under the law. So basically, Mayor Bill de Blasio was literally doing political horse trading, like literal, the most open. It was so bad, such bad political corruption, just open quid pro quo for the sake of the voting blocks in these communities, in these neighborhoods, where Mayor de Blasio, because of the work of activists like the organization YAFED, which is founded by people who went through the system, and they provide assistance for people who are trying to leave and trying to get an actual education and trying to learn how to support themselves for the first time. Like I'm a big fan of YAFED. I think they do amazing work. Um, because the work of YAFED originally pushing this forward, they called for this back in 2015. This has been going on for over 10 years. They've been pushing for people to be held freaking accountable. Okay. They they called for an investigation, and basically Mayor Bill de Blasio's office purposefully obstructed this investigation because they needed and basically were bargaining to not put on heat to the community because they wanted their voting block and they wanted to stay in power. They wanted to stay elected. And all these emails got leaked and exposed where they're like just basic openly doing like political horse trading, where they're promising people like, oh no, when this report comes out, when this investigation into these yeshivas and if they're holding standards comes out, it's going to show that they're making improvements. Like it's going to show that like things are going well. Just like the such open political horse trading. It's crazy. So not only has this been purposefully obstructed for years and activists been pushing so hard, but when these investigations finally come out, the theories, the hypothesis is all confirmed that these schools are failing, they're failing students, that they don't know basic skills. A lot of them can barely speak English. And I don't care. Like you do not have religious freedom to kneecap your children. Like as an adult, you have the freedom to go live how you want. But your children, your child as an American citizen has their own private right to a certain level of education, and you're depriving them of that. Like that's unacceptable. Um so that's kind of the biggest news right now, is that a bunch of these schools are there's this crackdown finally happening, and they're pulling funding because they're failing to meet education standards. Now the yeshivas are saying, well, one, this is attack on our religion. And then they also have a contention saying that, oh, well, actually, through our studies, you have to learn a lot of critical thinking. You have to learn a lot of analytic skills. And I probably think that there's an element of that that is true. Like, look, I've never been to a yeshiva. I know people have been to yeshiva, and you do have to. I mean, I don't know what kind of school of thought they're going to in any given one of these yeshivas. Based on what I'm familiar with, my friends, they went to schools that encouraged a high degree of argumentation and critical thinking. Um, very like lawyerly work almost. Okay, fair enough. And you maybe you do actually learn some of those skills in these kinds of schools. That doesn't mean that it's not okay if you don't know basic math. You can get those skills from dissecting the Talmud like in great depth, and you still also need to learn how to do basic math. You need to know a little bit of basic science. Like you can't have one or the other. You are required to have both. So anyways, this is my
Yeah.
general
So
opinion. I felt sorry for rambling.
uh, no, that's great. You said most of what I wanted to say. But so the part that I want, first of all, I want to mention that most people, I mean, everybody in the chat agrees with this, including with this being a good thing that they're doing this, including not just Israelis and atheist Israelis in the chat, but even like our very own religious uh, Torah Worldwide, who's a religious Jew. Uh, she's agreeing with this. I'm saying I'm 100% with you. Um, yeah, saying I'm religious, and what they do is disgusting. So even religious Jews in the chat and agree with this, right? And also, she and other people. By the way, am I imagining things, or is Torah is she, right? If
I
I'm
have no
wrong,
idea.
let me know. I think it's a she. But Torah was saying this is happening in Israel. A lot of people were mentioning this is happening in Israel as well. And Amir was saying, now please do that in Israel as well. Because I want to mention, when I was in Israel, I met with a lot of activists on on this issue, right? And I talked to them because this is happening on a even larger scale in Israel. And there are people who used to be, so they take them and they don't give them any of the required skills for them to be able to be an effective part of the uh, labor market or the workforce. And that's, as you mentioned, by design, so that they become dependent on this community, and there's no way for them to um, and there's a community of people in Israel who try to reach out to people who are maybe trying to get out of that community, and they're trying to establish schools for them to bring them quickly up to the point, because they are years behind. They don't even have the most basic of skills to be able to do any work, and they're trying to fill that gap, and they're trying to send secret messages in Israel. Like in Tel Aviv, they have their own area, and they go in there, these activists, and try to send them secret messages or tell them that they're, because a lot of them don't even know there's help out there for them. A lot of them, they don't even know that there's
Exactly. Do you
other
even know
ways.
your rights as a citizen? Do you know that you have
They don't.
protections as a citizen that are guaranteed to you?
Yes. Yeah, they don't know that. They don't know that. And they don't know, like in Israel, some activists have done a very good job in creating those resources for them. But they have now the challenge is actually getting them to know, because that society is very secretive. It's very closed off. They don't let you use the internet. They don't let you they don't let you use like smartphones. And a lot of these people, they for example, in Tel Aviv, they go and put posters in the community that are meant to look like they are religious posters, but they have hidden messages in them to make the people in that community aware that there's help out there for them. For example, some of these posters that they put there, they, instead of saying that there's help out there for them, they act like they're angry that some people are trying to reach in. But the point is, by showing that anger, for people who are reading those posters to realize that there are people out there
Yeah, it's
trying
like,
to reach in.
F this specific helpline for abused women. They're so bad. It's like, wait, there's a specific helpline.
Yeah, much more subtle. So I like it's I went to Israel and I interviewed these people. It's very very interesting trying to help these people, but it's like a society living within a society. Like you go to Tel Aviv and you think like, oh my god, this is a first world country, right? And then all of a sudden you go into that neighborhood and you think like you've been in a time capsule and you just went like 500 years back. Or like, what is this? What are these streets? What is this like? And it's very interesting that this is happening in a community of people that are the most educated, the most talented, the most entrepreneurial. Like, because the Jewish community around the world are known for their for their contribution to science and technology and being ahead of almost anyone else in the world. And it's so interesting that these uber religious people have managed to create this bubble among a community of people known for how far ahead in technology and
Mhm.
science they are relative to the rest of the world, which is
It
such
really,
a
for me, it really comes down to,
irony.
if your way of life is so superior, you should not need to do any tactic that would compel people to be there. And this includes how you treat your children, because children are a vulnerable population. Torres, I swear, I'm a man.
Okay,
It's
I
so
didn't know
funny.
why I assumed that you're a woman. Sorry.
But I wanted to highlight that Cat Lady is saying, yes, these are very good sources, and I'm one of the ones who use them. It's a
Hmm.
really important
Oh, that's great.
resource to have. Um, uh, so yeah, anyways, I hope that New York State continues to go after people who refuse to be in compliance with the law. If your school gets shut down and you continue to have students illegally, I hope you are held accountable to that. I hope you're prosecuted. Um,
Yes. This is child abuse.
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
it's not okay.
You
Um,
start Torah's comment? You wanted to, or did I start that one?
I think you did.
This one. Okay, Torah was saying they do horrible stuff. They play on emotion and make them feel horrible for feeling lust. They chemically castrate something. What? What? Really?
Oh
I
my
didn't know about
lord.
that one. But I've seen how is like it's. I mean, we can't even begin to say it to explain how horrible and how close the societies are. Um, what is the name of that documentary that we recommend people to watch when it comes to
That
the
your
New
friend is
York?
in?
Yes,
What's his
I
name?
forgot the
Ari?
name.
I think it was called One of
Yes,
Us.
One of Us, guys. Go watch One of Us on Netflix. You would
Yeah,
realize how horrible this whole community is in New York.
yeah, Ari
It's bad.
Hershkovitz.
It's bad. Yes.
It's
Okay.
it's just all about the
Mm,
high control for me. I cannot stand high control. Doesn't matter what group you
okay.
come from. Um, and it should be on Netflix if anyone's curious.
Yeah.
The one thing I didn't
Yeah.
like about One
You
of
will.
Us is that the woman who's trying to get her kids and escape her marriage, in the movie, they kinda hide the fact that she's a lesbian. And I'm like, "Why do you have to hide that?" I
Oh,
don't know.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, we have we let's do the comments here. Let me
Yes.
see.
The
Okay,
first comment
here's
was the
one
Freedom
comment.
from Religion Foundation, celebrating the
Oh,
decision, and I'm with agreement. This person is
nice.
saying, "I teach at an Orthodox Jewish school that's not Hasidic. I had a student transfer in at 10th grade." So for those who are not American, 10th grade is like around 16 years old, 15, 16 years old. And they could barely write a sentence. His father, a very kind man, told me that his previous school didn't focus on secular education. Such schools are doing the kids a big disservice. Once again, guys, when they say secular education, I want people to know that this is not like LGBT studies. Secular education in this context is English. Secular education in this
Yeah.
context is math. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the liberal woke agenda.
Yeah, anything that is basically not religion, they call it secular.
Yeah.
Um why was Muhammad, why was some Nath banned?
Oh no,
Why
because they're
was
they're switching on different accounts and spamming constantly.
Oh, okay,
No,
okay, got it. Got
this
it.
this was a justified ban, 100%.
Ban? Okay. Okay, okay. Cool.
Oh, this is wait, scroll up a little bit. So this is from an investigation that the New York Times did in 2022. Wait, show us the graph. And
Ooh.
long story short, like you can see how poorly the Hasidic schools, because it's not even all Jewish schools, it's the Hasidic schools mostly. The boys are being deprived the most that are performing so badly. Um, and so this is part of the big investigation that we mentioned earlier. And then if you scroll down, the person commenting on it is like, "This is so anti-Semitic. There are lots of
What?
terrible public schools. How much money do we send to them?" Yeah, but the public
Data. Data is anti-Semitic. Oh
apparently.
my God. Jesus Christ. I mean, these people are being, as Susanna mentioned, you're being anti Semitic. You're hurting Jewish kids. That is anti Semitic. Oh my God. All right. So we got two super chats.
Oh, lovely.
Thank you
Um,
guys.
Gingosaurus is saying, "Thank you for the super chat, Ginga, saying schools can keep doing whatever without funding." No, that'd be
No,
illegal.
actually. Yeah, there are certain standards that you have to meet as a school, even if you're not getting public funding.
And then if you continue to
Because
do that without compliance with the law and without compliance to inspections, that's against
yeah.
the law.
So the public schools have more requirements than private schools because they're publicly funded. But both private and public school, the children have to meet certain requirements because it's child rights, right? It's child rights for children to, because every government needs to take care of its children, and one of the things that it needs to take care of is to make sure that all children are given the tools required for them to be able to be functioning members of society during their childhood. That is the responsibility of every government to make sure. That's why even if parents are homeschooling their children, they are it's required by law for them to meet certain standards.
Yeah.
Like the government has to come check and make sure that they're basically learning, basic skills, math, reading, writing,
And
stuff like that.
one thing I want to emphasize is that this impacts an estimated 65,000 children in New York. 65,000
Oh,
children in New York. That has major implications
just
for a
one
community.
65 children in just
65,000
one
children
city.
in New York. I think this state
Huh.
has a vested interest in what's going on with 65,000 kids. I don't know.
And
That
just,
sounds like that could really impact their community.
are you sure in just one city? Just that? Okay,
No, no,
that
no.
is
I think that's throughout the state.
okay. It's New York State. Okay, that's still a lot. That's insane. The cat lady is saying it's Jew York. By the way, said by a Jew. Okay.
Yeah, and people in other countries are like, we're not even allowed to homeschool here. I feel conflicted about homeschooling. But at the same
Yeah, I feel
time,
like,
because of various things
yeah.
going on in my state, I'm like, I have to homeschool my kids.
Every time I see what some governments are doing with their curriculum, I'm like, okay, we need homeschooling. But then I see what some parents are doing with their children. I'm like, oh no, we need government schooling.
Yeah,
We need
exactly.
government. We need to ban homeschooling. I'm like, oh no, we need homeschooling. So I keep going back and forth on this. I don't know.
No,
All right,
seriously, I'm like, I'm not
so
exposing my kids to any of this shit. Fuck that. But that's a
yeah,
different
so
story. Let's go. Speaking of banning people and crackdowns over educational standard, let's switch across the pond
we have two
and go.
super chats, I
Oh,
think.
we have two more? Oh my god, I'm so sorry. No,
No,
we did
one,
this one.
one,
Okay.
one. We just one.
Asian
Yeah,
is
we did.
saying, yeah, our local Chinese American. From a culture that worships education, my family always told me to study hard in science, math, and were terrified that my English wasn't erudite enough. The Chinese turned test taking into a religion, and we wonder why they're so
Actually,
dominant.
you when you say that, you're not using that as a metaphor. They
No,
actually test taking into a religion.
yeah.
Yes. It's not an exaggeration, but yeah.
They're like, "Oh my gosh,
Okay.
why do they perform so highly? Why
Mhm.
why are they, among the most successful and wealthy ethnicities in America? I wonder why."
Yeah.
Because
And
for
also,
thousands of years, they're like, "We're gonna freaking hit the books."
by the way, this also shows that this is not in, like, the fact that the Chinese and Jewish people and like Japanese people and all of that do much better in IQ and stuff. You could see based on their history and their culture that this is all, at least mostly, environmental. It's not it's not the DNA. It's not inherent. It's like like Jewish culture, because of their focus on reading, writing, because that being a major
Analysis,
part of their culture,
textual
analysis, and
understanding.
also because of the oppression and discrimination against them, and them having to use different mechanism to survive based on becoming good at certain skills, because they didn't have a country, they didn't have an army. All of these were the reasons why they become culturally, they had certain values that made them get ahead. And also in China, you could see, like, this is all, if you see certain people are ahead, this is based on their culture, not because of their something inherent within their DNA.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's so funny because I was reading the book Woke Anti-Semitism by David Bernstein, who I really admire. And it's so funny. He's like, in my culture, like arguing is love. What are you talking about? People are like, oh no, we have to learn how to have productive conversations without arguing. He's like, in my culture, arguing is love. What are you talking about?
I'm
Then
making
meanwhile, the
love with you
Chinese
by
historically
fighting
are
against
like,
your argument.
I will learn how to study because I will climb the administrative state.
Do you know who makes the most amazing, gorgeous, and other adjectives that I can't use here on YouTube, blasphemous art ever? We do! And for some reason, we are giving it away for free. Download them now using the link in the description before we change our mind.